Hello, I'm Bill Flynn, and welcome to the first edition of the Erie Police Department's new podcast, Behind the Blue.
And I'm his sidekick, Chad Jameson. Each month, Bill and I are going to bring you inside the Erie Police Department and really sit down and have candid conversations with the men and women in blue about the issues that are affecting our community. With that, I want to introduce my partner in crime, Bill Flynn. And really, Bill, who are you? How did you get involved in this? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, I'm a resident. I've been a resident of Erie since the summer of 2012. I moved here from the East Coast. And when I enter a new community or move to a new community, I always like to know, what's going on in the community, who's running it, and all these sort of things.
Sure.
And so I went to the Erie website and thumbed through that. And then I bumped into the police department's website where I noticed they were offering a course called the Citizens Police Academy.
This is the one they do every year on Friday nights.
Yeah, they do every Friday night. Pretty big commitment. It was 9 weeks of Friday nights. And I said, well, I don't know if I'll like it because, quite frankly, most of my previous contacts with the police department has been adversarial, so I wasn't real sure if I wanted to spend 9 weeks with them. But turns out it was absolutely a blast. I couldn't wait for Friday nights to show up again. And after I finished the course, they asked me if I would volunteer, and I kind of hemmed and hawed, and then they set the hook, and
you took it.
I've been doing it ever since.
Yeah. Well, and on that note, you play a very important role as a volunteer within the police department. Yeah. Tell us just, real quick, what exactly do you do as a volunteer for the police department?
Well, they'll assign me things to do, but primarily what I've been doing the last few times is I've been entering in crime statistics. I'll take case files and I'll read through them, and then I'll enter that data into the national databases, which is important for future funding and things like this.
And this is the FBI uses
SBI,
this and everything.
Yeah, it's called NIBRS.
Right.
And it goes into the national database, and that's used to analyze and determine all sorts of things. I do that. I've did that before COVID. Since COVID, I haven't done much of that. But I also, right now, what I've been doing is I've been going through case files to make sure they're up to date. By that I mean, is the case still active, or has it been closed? Has it been determined that it has to be inactive? And I do that. And I also help with the oral boards, which I didn't know what they were until I started doing them, but it's really nothing more than an interview for
new officers.
For new officers.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's a really key piece, because not every agency utilizes community members like yourself in their oral board process. A lot of them are just internal, and so having somebody like yourself sit on our oral boards allows us as a community to have sort of an activist there that can look at these people and say, is this a good fit for the community?
Exactly. And that's one of the things this police department here does, is I don't think a lot of them do, is they're very community oriented. And that's why they wanted me to be on there, because I could represent the community.
And you sat on one really key one, which was our guest that we're going to introduce here in a few minutes. But you sat on that oral board as well, and we know that this special guest has gone on to do some great things within the department. So
he was a good hire.
Yes. So, well, Bill, thanks for everything that you do. I'm excited to be sitting next to you.
Well, I'm happy to be here
in this little venture that we're starting. My name's Chad Jameson. I grew up in the area. My wife is a longtime Erie resident with deep roots, and right out of high school, I went to the military, became a cop in the Air Force, serving during Desert Storm. Got out of that, became a civilian law enforcement agent. Ironically enough, my brother and I, who is also an Erie police officer, went through the academy together. We both graduate the academy. He gets hired in Erie. I get hired with an adjacent community as a new school resource officer. Decided that maybe law enforcement wasn't really the route I wanted to go. Got out of it. My brother stayed here. He's been with Erie for 20 plus years now. And it's really fun to now be a volunteer member of the police department and get to work with him and all the men and women of the police department. But, we get to work on some pretty cool projects together. So it's a lot of fun. I'm super excited to help launch this podcast.
This is going to be fun.
It is. I think it's a really an opportunity for us to bring the rest of Erie inside of the police department and really give them a true view of what goes on in law enforcement, and specifically in our community. So
that's so important because it's given today's environment. It's police can have a different view by the public, and that's the minority of them.
It is. And really, what we want to do is we want to humanize the men and women in blue, and just show the community that these people are here to protect us. They're here to do a job. The joke was when I became a cop was if you wanted to be a firefighter, because everybody loves firefighters. Nobody wants cops at their house. So with that, I want to introduce our first guest. So we thought, as we sat down, we were kind of planning for what do we want to talk about on our first podcast. And we thought, man, one of the really unique aspects of law enforcement is the school resource officer. And they play such a critical role, not only in the police department, but in the schools themselves. We have with us Soaring Heights School Resource Officer, Stephen Williams. Stephen, thanks for joining us on our inaugural podcast.
You're welcome.
And we're excited to have you. And, we got a couple of questions for you. I think it's important for the community to understand the role of the school resource officer. They see you and all the other school resource officers at all the schools within Erie. But I don't know that everybody truly understands what the role of a school resource officer is. So
if somebody asks me, I'm not even really sure what a school resource officer does. I have an idea, but I'm not precisely sure. Could you help us out there?
So piecing this together, we, in my mind, do three major things. The first thing we do is protect the school, right? We don't want outsider threats, people trying to get in the school, cause harm to the students or staff or anything like that. So that's the primary thing we do when you think of a school resource officer, why we're there. Secondly, schools are a community, right? They're full of people. They're full of kids who can commit crimes. And staff members who can commit crimes. It's like a mini town. It could have thousands of kids in there and staff members at one time. With that being said, the second thing we do is try and prevent that crime from happening and stop that crime and take reports on that when it happens. The third thing we do, which is really, really important, is community policing. So we get to know these kids, we get to know the staff members, and it's a great opportunity to put yourself out there and know your students and know the community and get to know them and be involved. And in doing that, we can help serve the community a lot better because we know these kids, we know their parents.
So I think it's important to note, it's your role in the school isn't necessarily reactive law enforcement. You're actually acting as a liaison between the law enforcement side of the community and our most prized possession, which is our children and our educators, right? But it's not just reactive law enforcement. Like you said, you're there to do a lot of crime prevention and to build a rapport with the students and the parents, correct?
Correct. So with me personally, pre-COVID, I used to go in a lot of classrooms, talk with kids about whatever. So teacher will ask me, hey, do you want to teach a subject about the Constitution or the Bill of Rights, or do you want to speak on crime prevention, or do you want to do a meet and greet with the students? And it's great. I love that. I love my kids at Soaring Heights. So,
what you mentioned the pandemic, there's been I heard a lot of chatter from amongst neighbors and friends and people about kids may be experiencing some kind of anxieties or depression because of that. Are there any particular resources or that these kids have that you could provide or direct them to help them if that is the case for them or one of their friends?
I would say the first thing you should do is talk with your school counselor. The school counselor is well aware of the impact this is having on kids, especially with the online learning. It's kind of been topsy-turvy with a lot of my students. Some kids are doing really well with the online St. Vrain Launch Ed program. Some of them are having a hard time doing the hybrid thing. Some of them just can't do that, and I don't blame them. It's difficult to do. I imagine trying to learn constantly from home when you have everything at home bothering you.
Right.
So if you're having trouble, go see your counselor, go see your school resource officer, say, hey, I just want to talk for a minute. I bet if you go to any of us SROs, we will sit down and talk with you.
Well, I know you're CIT trained, and that training is a law enforcement specific training dealing with mental health. So you're equipped to deal with a lot of the issues that you have seen or you may start seeing with it's not just students, it's teachers. This whole pandemic thing has really affected the mental health of everybody in the community. And so you are trained. Can you tell people a little bit about what CIT is and how you have or may apply that in a school setting?
So CIT training, crisis intervention training, covers the gamut of mental health issues. You do a couple of scenarios. You'll have some speakers who come in and talk about maybe bipolar, autism, that sort of thing, and what you should and should not say. The way we apply that stuff is if a student is in crisis, we can kind of first get down to their level and understand, what's going on. The first thing, my thing is like, hey, what do you like to do? Tell me about what you're doing on your off days. Before I just start jumping in, what's wrong?
It's building
What's
a
wrong?
rapport with the
Yeah.
person, yeah.
Right.
Understanding the person and
build
what
that rapport.
where they might be coming from.
And understand what's going on at home.
Mhm.
What do they like to do? Well, what's different today? What's upsetting you today? And that really calms a lot of students down. Especially helps that I play video games, but
Well, you can relate with.
Yeah.
I know you can relate with my kids, so
so that makes it easier. But just kind of understanding where they're coming from on stuff.
sure. Obviously with the pandemic, it's really changed education. It's changed everything of life and law enforcement as well. So being a school resource officer, where, as you were just saying, it's very critical that you're able to interact with the students and the teachers, but focus on the student at a very personal level. How has that changed how you're able to do your job? And do you think it will get back to a spot where kids can come up to you and feel comfortable, not just you being in uniform, but being comfortable coming up to you just as a person and having that interaction with you?
That's a little bit of a difficult question. I don't think it's changed that much. It's just changed to the point of what we can do and how we can interact with students, right? So trying to have lunch with students every day, all that stuff, you kind of got to be careful because at the same time, I don't want to get a kid sick. I don't want to get sick from a kid. So, you really have to kind of watch those boundaries. I think in time it'll get back to normal, but it's gonna take a while.
Yeah.
So
No, I agree.
Yeah. Well, how long have you been an SRO?
this will be my second year.
What's your favorite thing about being an SRO?
My absolute favorite is talking with kids about stuff because you never know what that student is capable of. Just yesterday, I was in the innovation room talking with the teacher, and one of the kids had made a telegraph, an actual working telegraph with Morse code, with lights.
Wow.
Yeah. It was pretty amazing. That was the most amazing thing I've seen in a long time.
Most people
But-
don't even know what a telegraph is, by the way.
Or
But
Morse code.
yeah, or
Uh,
Morse code. But
You use it to communicate Morse code back and forth. But this kid makes that stuff in his basement, and it was really, really awesome to see that. And he's like, I didn't know you're interested in that. I'm like, I didn't know you did that stuff. So for me, a lot of kids think, I'm a police officer, and a little hesitant at first to talk to me, and Then I start telling them like I'm a huge nerd. I like reading. I like science. I subscribe to a lot of YouTube channels. You know, I play video games. We're normal people just like you. So I don't just go home and sleep or, you know.
I think that's such a key thing, though, is
Absolutely.
it's humanizing the badge, right? Understanding that anybody that's in law enforcement, you are a human being first, and the badge, the uniform, the tools, those are kind of like Batman, right? It's something you strap on to do a job with, but deep down, you're just a human being, just like every one of us. You like a lot of the same stuff that most of us do, and I think that's just such a key piece, and people need to understand that just because you have a uniform and a badge and and the tools, gun and the duty belt and everything else, it does not make you unapproachable.
Right.
I think that's fantastic because you have to have that understanding of the office of the patrolman about what they do. I think that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Well, Stephen, Officer Williams, we're honored to have you as our first guest on the show. I think you've at least brought some light to what school resource officers do. When people see you, I think hopefully they'll see this and understand a little bit better why you guys are there and the role that you play at the schools and within the community. So we thank you very much for joining us today.
Appreciate it.
We know you got a lot of work to get to, so
Yeah.
we're going to get you out of here.
Right?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. But it's not all fun and games at the school. Unfortunately, there is real law enforcement work that has to be done.
Right.
And so we thank you for taking a little time to join us today. So.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right. We want to thank Officer Williams for joining us today and giving us a little bit of insight into the role that the school resource officer plays and really how important they are acting as a liaison between the Erie Police Department and the community, and specifically our most important asset, which is our kids.
Yeah, and I really got a lot out of what Officer Williams just told us because, and I'm up there all the time, and I didn't know he did half those things.
Well, and even as a former school resource officer, the role has changed so
I bet
much.
it has.
So,
I bet it
so
has.
we really want to thank him for bringing that insight. When you see the school resource officer out there, wave at him, give him a high five, whatever it is. Let them know that you care about them because they're there to protect our kids. So, but with that, now we want to have Bill and Chad's crime prevention tip of the month.
Yep.
So this month, I know you've been reviewing hundreds of case files, specifically fraud case files. And we know fraud is, with the pandemic and everything else, fraud is a big thing. Tell us a little bit about some of the things you're seeing and maybe how people can prevent being a victim of fraud.
Yeah, like Chad was saying, I've been going through files to updating them, and it's just amazing to me the number of ways that people try to take your money. And you could call it a crime of opportunity because you provide them with the opportunity if you don't step back and think it over. Don't react. For example, I've run across cases of people trying to purchase an animal, a dog, online, and they're asking them to prepay for this and prepay for that shipping and insurance.
And there's no dog at the end of this.
There's no dog. They just
They're just sending money.
send them money. If anyone asks you to pay for something with gift cards, that's a giant, giant red flag. Don't do that. I've read the cases of people that have lost thousands of dollars buying gift cards.
And this isn't a story for a podcast. This is real. These are real Erie citizens that have been pilfered out of thousands of dollars of hard-earned money.
Yeah.
And really could have been prevented if they just would have said, this doesn't make any sense.
Just step back. I mean, I personally was almost hooked up with one for not thousands of dollars, but and I was a click away from pushing the button. But then I took a breath and stepped back and said, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
The BS meter went up and said,
that's right. It started to pay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just asked a question, and That's the last I heard of them.
Yeah.
They couldn't answer it, and they figured I'd figured it out. But
And they moved on to the next
moved on
victim.
to the next victim. But these people make bank doing that,
Right.
So
Well, and I think it's, there's so many other ways people are being frauded out of,
Oh.
their hard-earned money. But really the key thing here is if you get a notice, if you get an email or a Facebook message or, whatever it is, and somebody's asking for money, I think right there should raise a flag and go, oh, let me think about this. Like,
it should at least make you take a deep breath.
exactly. And then, do a little research. If it's a family member that's in trouble while they're in Europe, maybe check and see if they're in Europe before you just start wiring money to
Exactly.
somebody. Whatever it is, anytime you're being asked for money, check it out. It doesn't take but maybe a couple minutes, maybe it's a couple of hours. Research it, make sure it's legit before you just blindly send somebody money. I mean, these are very easily preventable crimes.
They're preventable. Every one of them is preventable, and reading those case files, every person that I've read that's been involved with one feels like a dope after it's done.
And I know another thing that's running rampant right now is the unemployment thing. People are getting notices of unemployment claims.
I know, I'm not familiar with that.
So real quick, I know that I was actually one. I got a notification from the state of Colorado that said an unemployment claim had been filed, under my name.
So what do you do?
And so what I did was what we don't want you to do, but at the time I didn't know. I contacted the Erie Police Department, and Officer Wilson came out and took a report, and she was telling me, she's like, Chad, it's weird. We're getting like 5 to 10 of these a day.
Well,
And so
that bogs down the police department.
it does, and it creates a caseload because now, detectives and stuff are being taken away from really more serious, more major cases, and they're having to just clear these out because it's not necessarily fraud. I think it's a breakdown in the system. But if you get one of these notifications in the mail that says an unemployment claim has been made against you, jump on the Erie PD website, go to eriecode.gov. You can get onto the Erie page, the police page, sorry, and there's actually a link there now. And you click on that, it goes to the Colorado Department of Labor's website.
Okay.
You fill that out, and then really just contact the credit bureau. If you contact one of them, you fill out a form, and it puts it on all 3 of the credit bureaus. Do that, rather than necessarily tie up the police department, unless you believe it is truly something fraudulent that is bigger than just that. But I know it's something that's going on within the community, and we just want to put that out there. Obviously, if you have any question or any doubt, contact the non-emergent number. And that number is 303-441-4444. And that will get you to the non-emergent dispatcher. And you'll at least be able to talk to an officer and figure out at that point, the best course of action.
Good.
So with that, Bill and I want to say thank you for joining us for the first Behind the Blue podcast of the Erie Police Department. Bill, it's been an absolute pleasure sitting next to you.
It's been a blast for me as well.
We want to
Make sure
thank
you like us.
like and follow the town of Erie and the Erie Police Department on Facebook. That's where this will be. If you have a comment or there's something you want to hear on the next podcast, leave it in the comment section below, and we'll try to get to it. So we really want this to be an interactive thing between the Erie Police Department and the community. They put these 2 goofballs in front of the camera. So, like us, follow us, and let us know what you want to hear coming up. We're going to do this once a month, every month for the rest of the year. At that point, maybe they kick us off. So I don't know.
Yeah,
but
whatever.
but it's been a blast, and I look forward to the next one.
Take care.
All right.
This is great. Thanks for watching.
Thanks.